Hello everyone, welcome back yet again. We're working on the Beetle still. I'm going to show you guys how I paint some of the details, starting with Tamiya's X18, which is semi-gloss black. I'm going to go ahead and paint the fuel tank. We're going to paint some of the other components as far as the suspension and a little bit more of the chassis. You can see here we're painting the seats and the interior semi-gloss black as well to represent black leather. So here I have the seats taped off for everything that I want to keep purple. So I make sure I'm only painting what needs to be painted semi-gloss black. Everything else will remain purple. Should also note that I'm showing you this at double speed just to kind of speed the whole process up and not have to watch 40 minutes of me painting components. And here we have the floor of the vehicle. Again, that portion of the firewall was painted the same color as the vehicle, so you can see here I have that taped off, so that remains purple. Everything else here is going to get painted semi-gloss black.
You built these walls, now watch them fall. You even tied
As I mentioned in the video where I painted this, the body color, I did not prime the rest of this. Fortunately, it did turn out just fine, but it would have felt better had I primed it first.
There are no pictures, and you wonder if there'll be a happy ending tonight. Tonight we get down, speakers underground. So far away from home to worry about. But we will run this place straight to the ground. You twist your words into these lies. You never cared for me, only to see me scream. But the story never looked the same, and you're still just lost that I made it here some way. Tonight we get down, speakers underground. So far away from home to worry about. But we will run this place straight to the ground. One arm open, keep on hanging on. One arm open, keep on hanging on. One arm open.
Obviously, just like last time, anytime I paint more than one of something, I'm just going to show you one. I don't think you need to see me paint the second seat as well. And here you see me painting the actual firewall portion and the parking brake. And here's the pedals. And then just some various other components which are also painted semi-gloss black. I should also note that all of my Tamiya paints I thin for airbrushing as soon as I buy them. I basically uncap them and pour enough thinner to get them to the consistency that I like. So you'll notice if you see my bottles, a lot of them have a red or black T written on them. That's for me to know that they've been thinned out. And of course, we got to do the interior of the vehicle itself, which I'm going to also do in the semi-gloss black, again to represent a leather headliner. I typically use semi-gloss black for all my headliners, just to give it a little bit of a better look. I find that flat black, even though it represents cloth a little bit better, just doesn't look quite right. So I'll usually use semi-gloss black for this. Now we're going to move on to splash paints, flat black. Now this is used as a base to their metallizers, so everything I paint in this color, I'm going to go forward and repaint in a metallizer color right after this. So you can see here I have the engine glued together. Anything that gets painted the same color, I will typically glue together as a component before painting it, just to make it a little bit easier. So again, anything that I end up painting in the metallizers, I'm going to paint flat black first. You can also use gloss black if you like. I just feel flat black gives a bit of a better look. So first I'm going to use Splash Paint's aluminum metallizer. This is for all the components in the instructions called for aluminum paint. Instead of using the Tamiya paint, I do prefer the Splash Paint's metallizers. So you'll notice I painted the engine block but not the transmission. The transmission is actually going to be painted a separate color, which you'll see in a little bit. And now we have Splash Paint's burnt iron for the remainder of the metal components. Now here you can see I'm using my little circle template here to paint the part of the oil filter cover, which is on the aluminum engine bottom cover, but needs to be painted burnt iron. Also, before I can paint the transmission, I need to tape off the engine, which I just painted aluminum, as that has to remain aluminum.
Let's make this world that you and I built.
Next, we're going to move to Tamiya's X2, which is gloss white for just a couple components. We're going to fill the washer fluid bottles, I believe they are, in the engine area here, the steering wheel, and the wheels. Next, we're going to use Tamiya's X1, which is a gloss black. This is going to be used for a couple of the suspension components, mainly the shocks. and the inside of the wheels. The outside of the wheels need to be white, inside needs to be black. So once again, you can see we use the circle template just to make sure we get it as close to perfect as we can on that inside. Next, we're going to move back to Tamiya's X18. Again, that's semi-gloss black, just to touch up a few areas that didn't paint out quite as nice as I would have liked.
Let's build a rocket ship.
Next, we're going to use a 4-to-1 mix of Tamiya's X7 Gloss Red and XF59 Desert Yellow to mix up the orangey tan color we need for the distributor cap. Now, the way I do this when I need such a small amount is I just use drops. So here I'm going to get 4 drops of the Desert Yellow and then 1 drop of the Gloss Red, and then mix them up and paint the distributor. Now, if I needed more, I'd use a pipette, but again, since I'm only painting the distributor cap this color, I didn't really need all that much. And then I'm just going to use a small amount of Splash Paint's Champagne Brass Metallizer to paint the Vacuum Advanced Diaphragm cover, also here on the distributor. Next, we're going to move on to Tamiya Paint's X2 Gloss White and XF55 Deck Tan. We're going to mix these in a 1-to-1 ratio for the parcel shelf. Again, I don't need much, so I'm just going to do a drop of each, and that'll be enough for what I need to do. This is actually also going to be used for the grab handle. Now you can see here I fall into the trap of having a little too much paint on my paintbrush here. It goes on a little bit too thick. And you can see I have to take some of that off with a Q-tip and then just remove some from my brush to get it where it needs to be. Next color is going to be XF19, which is sky gray. We're going to be painting some of the ductwork in this color. Then we're going to move on to Tamiya's XF85 Rubber Black. We're going to use this for the CV boots here on the front axles. Finally, we're going to finish off with some Molotov Chrome. Now I do this a couple different ways. I either use the refill to put a few drops on a piece of tape here and put it onto the paintbrush. I also have an assortment of the actual pens, which I'll use when I need a little bit more control. Last thing I'm going to do before we finish this video, show you guys how I fixed the broken shifter. So I just went ahead and got some mechanics wire here. I'm going to cut off a little bit more than I need. I'm just going to get measured up, bent up to match the same shape as the shifter itself. We're going to cut the old piece off, drill some holes, and glue this in place.
To my dark side, it's been nice to hide you from pain. When will we?
You can see I got it bent to the same shape. I just got to go ahead and get a measurement of how big we want to cut this. Now I try a couple different methods here till I settle on one that I find was the best, where I simply use the measuring on the bottom of my mat there to measure out what I need and then cut it that way.
How did I not see this coming? Into the bright.
Now I'm actually want to cut it a little bit longer than what it looks like, since I'm going to drill into the two other shifter components, the boot and the knob, to get it countersunk in there and glued in place nice and solid.
It's not where your head.
So I'm going to go ahead and just cut the old shifter out of there and proceed to glue the new one in.
To whom it may concern.
So first thing before I start drilling is I'm going to try to make a centering hole here with my X-Acto blade. Now this obviously is not the safest way to possibly do this, but it's the way I use, so better or worse, this is how I do it.
I'll try so damn hard, or I'll die.
And once I make that centering hole, I get my Tamiya drill and go ahead and drill it about 2 millimeters in to make sure I have a nice solid base to glue the shifter into.
It's not where your head. It's where you go. To whom it may concern. How did I not see this coming? Into the bright side of summer.
The shifter base itself is actually keyed, so I wound up sticking it into the base here so I know which way it's supposed to go. Got a little bit of Bob Smith Super Gold Plus and glued the shifter into the base. And then with it actually in the vehicle here, I'm able to tell that it is pointing in the direction that it needs to point in.
It may concern. I don't.
After this, all I got to do is follow the same process with the knob and get that glued in. Now you're going to notice this one looks a bit different. That's because I dropped my shift knob and it vanished into oblivion. So this is just a piece of sprue that I cut down, shaped up into the knob, and after I painted it up, you couldn't even tell the difference.
I don't want to know.
So thank you again for watching me. Next video, we're going to start putting the Beetle together. We may actually finish it in the next video. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe, send a like. You got any comments, please leave me a comment. Thanks again. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you next time.